What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Heck versus Hell, where the truth we tell. That is correct. We are here. We are happy. We are grateful. And we are thankful to have you as our listeners, our lovely joining family. Whether you are new here, veteran here. It sounds so weird to say old here because it's like it doesn't really, it doesn't matter what age you are, all right? It doesn't matter how long you've been with us. You're still family. We still love you. If you want to see any updates of what we will be having going on soon, and we will have a few things rolling out very, very soon, as Lex loves to say, very, very soon, we will be releasing a few teasers as to what it is and launching said event, I guess you could call it, but it's going to basically be bringing more episodes here to the channel for your lovely ears to hear different walks of life, different perspectives, different people coming on and sharing their story and testimony, as well as another big portion that we have not yet discussed with you, but it is something that will be coming out here very soon as well, and we might have mentioned it before, but it's right here. All right, it's right here. So I want to kind of just jump into this one because it is something that is taking at least America by storm right now. It is something very controversial, very, very controversial topic, and a sensitive one at that as well. And it is the situation with Charlie Kirk. Now, there is a lot of people that are sitting on either side of the fence, especially whenever it comes to the left and right side of America. If you're not familiar, America is basically divided in a left side and a right side, right? One is more conservative. They hold more of values, quote unquote, of what America used to be. A little more when it comes to, Christianity. But ultimately, they are still a little too extreme and can be hateful at times. And then there's the left side where that's, a lot of community that has to do with a whole lot of feminism, whole lot of, rainbow community, a whole lot of all these different areas of what are basically completely opposite of the conservative side, right? So they call it the right and left side. So if you don't know who Charlie Kirk is, you can look him up. He might have gotten around to your outlets, your media, wherever it is. But unfortunately, what was it, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, he was assassinated. He went to colleges and he essentially debated them, trying to fill them with knowledge in his own way of using the manner of debating to be able to do that, having people come up to him, ask questions. And he went to college campuses doing this. So he would give them informational data, stuff like that. But really it was for people to ask questions. And a lot of times there would be little mini debates going on because it would be people from the left that would approach it and try to give their perspective, almost like trying to convince him or just trying to find a way to prove that their point is correct and he shouldn't be explaining what he's saying. And ultimately, there's some miscommunications. So if you do look up his channel, look him up on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, you're going to see a lot of things. And that's some of the most recent things is the fact that he was assassinated. I believe he was around 36 years old, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been a little younger. But regardless of fact, it took America by storm because a lot of people liked him. He was very influential, especially being able to go and touch that many college kids, college children, college young adults, right? People that are wanting to further their education whenever it comes to the school systems of what they can provide. And it is a place, it definitely is a place to where you can challenge your beliefs, challenge your faith, challenge what it is that you stand on and your values. Challenge your values, and that's something I believe that we all should do, no matter how he did it. I don't completely agree with it, but that is one of the conversations that I want to have, is whether or not he was a martyr for God. Because one of the main things that he taught about and talked about was Christ, Jesus Christ, Christianity. I'm not sure if he was a Baptist. I can't remember exactly what he was, but he was a follower of Christ, self-proclaimed, and through what he taught. He did try to use a lot of his values to justify what it is that he was saying. Now, there are some very controversial conversations and topics that he's talked about that, yes, he is completely ignorant in, and he goes based off of statistics and not actually being in the presence or experiencing what is really going on. Because that's one thing that we know very clearly. That's one thing that I hate what people say. It's one thing that actually one of my first mentors, I don't like calling him a mentor because, I learned some stuff from him, but he didn't really lead me down the path that I was on. He was trying to almost lead me away from it, but he did teach me some decent values and decent pieces of information. But it's one thing that he says, and a lot of people that are in certain positions of quote unquote power, that have certain monetary influence, we'll say, have used, and it's the numbers don't lie, is essentially what they say. So, hey, you see me driving this car, you see how many sales I get, you see my revenue, you see how much money I'm making, the numbers don't lie. And they do lie, because they're really easy to forge, and they're really easy to use at your own whim on how you can present the numbers, on what numbers you're actually showing, right? That's why people have Ponzi schemes. That's why people have organized over here in the United States. I'm not sure if it's worldwide. I'm gonna be honest, I'm ignorant to the fact of how deep it goes, but the SEC, which is a very organized and highly evolved group, basically controlling money. It's kind of like the IRS in a way, but it's the portion that lays down the foundations and laws of what your capabilities with money and how to use it is. What is unethical and ethical, what is the laws and how you can and can't do it. And it's kind of important because it allows you to not get scammed by certain people. So it allows CEOs, big companies, different people to not go and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to have people invest into this product. They can come bring it on, and then I'm going to go and show those investments to my new round of investors that I want to gain. And that new round, I'm going to collect more money, but I'm going to use their money to pay off the old investors so they can feel like they're getting a return. And ultimately, they're going to pay me more money back into the company. And they just keep going back and forth like that. So they're faking and falsifying the real revenues of what their company is producing. And that's what the SEC does, right? So there are certain things in place that are kind of essential, I will say, and are governing laws, and have a purpose, have a place to put in the terms of laws. So I'm gonna be completely honest, I have no idea where I was heading down with that conversation. However, going back to his conversation, there's certain pieces of information that you have to experience. There's certain things that you have to experience. So with him, that's where I was at. With him, he used statistics based off of information on websites that took polls, that did X, Y, Z, that took, even the census is wrong. People will go and base numbers off of X, Y, Z, but the census can be wrong too, because there's people that just don't register. There's people that are, born at home, and nobody has a census on how many, what are they called? Amish people there are. Nobody really has a census about that because they don't have numbers. So there's certain things that are just not regulated, and that numbers aren't enough. Even whenever it comes to IRS, sometimes they don't even know they are being duped, and there are people moving money under them until years later, until they actually have to deeply go and investigate it. So numbers, and they constantly change. And even now, that's a conversation that I'm not going to have right now, because it could put the RDC channel on some ice, to put it slightly. However, there was conversations that he was ignorant to. And one of the main ones was whenever he talked about minorities, right? And I want to address that very prominently because of the fact that certain comments he would make, and it sounded very ignorant, even with that, it sounded very ignorant. Like certain things, it's like, okay, you kind of got a point. Like DEI, he brought up DEI. If you're not familiar with DEI, it's essentially a program that they implemented in America that makes it to where you have to have a certain number of people that are quote unquote minorities, meaning Black, Latinos, Europeans, people that are essentially not from here, but really it's people of color. Or women. They have to have a certain quota that they need to meet. So in order to do that, they have to drop their standards a little bit and let those people in. Not to say people that are minorities or people that are women are less than white people or white men that are already working there. It's not to say that at all. It's the fact that there are far and few in certain areas where people just don't want to sign up for. I really have never really met anyone that wanted to become a pilot. And that's one of the comments that he made, was basically walking onto an airplane and saying, there's a Black pilot. Well, I'm hoping that he can drive this thing, or I'll just turn around and get off. If I see it, I'm going to just turn around and get off. Something along those lines. And, obviously it doesn't sit really well, but it does make you get to a point of thinking of, was it a structure to where they did that prominently in order so that they could make it seem like reparations are being paid back to people of color, to where it's, and that's why I don't like it neither. And I see his point that he was trying to make, because it makes it seem like, hey, you guys are pitiful, let's pity you and let's give you a little more help. Yeah, let's go. When really it's the rough life that gives us that much hunger and thirst and wanting to become better for everyone, for the whole world, not just for people that we can relate to, not just for people with the same background as you, but for everyone across the world, because that is ultimately our mission as children of God. So he had a point in what he was talking about, but the way that he said it and structured it was not correct all the way. Now, when it came to, and I'm not telling you, I'm not defending him, but I'm being very unbiased whenever I have these conversations, because there are people that just completely hate him. They take his words and they take them at face value. It's the same thing whenever we go and we don't critically think on the Bible or allow the Spirit to reveal what is being said, we misinterpret it. We take it at our own whim. Now, what I do want to say of some of the comments that I was mentioning that he would make that are very ignorant is the systematic oppression that comes from people of color. And that is one thing that people would constantly bring up to him. And he would just constantly say, well, the fact is that Black families have less fathers, and the solution needs to be that Black fathers, Black men, need to stay in their families and essentially grow up a certain type of way. And although that is a face value problem, and that is not the direct manner of the all overall systematic oppression that goes on, because whether we want to see it or not, whether we want to believe it or not, yes, it is. There is a systematic oppression that comes to people of color, anyone that has a certain type of melanation on them. And even with the culture, because if you really, really think about it, even the music that is being listened to, there is radio stations right now that are promoting killing, bars, going to party every weekend, constantly going and essentially becoming independent from man or independent from woman. There are literally songs that go and teach you, hey, it's awesome and it's great to be a player, to go out there and try to get the quote-unquote baddest female you can and get more of them and get more of them, because that's almost like a trophy for you and it's what your value should lie in. And you wonder, why is it pushed so often? And the fact is that it's only pushed to people of color. And like, if you think about it, one thing that even J. Cole said, you know, he was talking in a song, he was basically preaching in a song, and he was talking about, you either have to be an NBA player, a rapper, or a drug dealer. And those are the only ways that you can get out of poverty. And that is a systematic oppression, because we can even go back to the 1980s. The 1980s, where, you know, it was the CIA that started going and pushing crack into the neighborhoods so they can fund wars in Panama. Now, that's things that they don't want to hear, that people don't want to speak about. But it's things that have been unveiled. It's things that they even put in movies very clearly, of how even someone like Pablo Escobar was connected and ultimately funding a war that the U.S. honestly had no business being in. This is the type of stuff. They went and poisoned our people in order to get their hands in another country. So they're willing to sacrifice their own people. So how do you not believe that there is not a systematic oppression? Because what is glorified for people of color, for men of color, is rapper, NBA star, or drug dealer. That is the only ways and manners that it is shown to get money, to get financial freedom, to get out of the rat race, in a sense. It's what's glorified. And we can go and take it back all the way to Roman culture, right? That's where it came from, too. They would put gladiators in the middle. They would go and fight against lions and distract the public from what's really going on. And the gladiators were getting the worst of it. They were slaves to the people that were controlling the shows. They were being put in there because they had a debt that they owed. So a lot of them, they were essentially fighting just to eat. So it ties so deeply, because that's what's happening now, is now they push this circus, which that's essentially what it was. Now they push this circus when things are going on. Now they're trying to push sports. Now we got huge fights coming on when it comes to boxing. All these type of sports are pushed not to make a huge... It causes pride, really. If you think about it, it causes so much pride, not only in oneself, but in one's territory. Because I've seen some die-hard people that are from a certain city, and they literally go and fight against other cities because of how much pride they carry in the team. And it's, you know, obviously we can go deeper on that too, and it's a call from wanting to be a part of something bigger. So going back to my main point is there is 100% a systematic oppression that goes on a daily basis. And yeah, there is a lot more poverty when it comes to quote unquote minorities, but I don't think putting certain things in there. That's why there's some things that even Donald Trump is going crazy right now, but there's certain things that he's doing that I kind of agree with. There's other things that I'm just like, this guy is not a man of God. This guy is something else, but it is not that. You know, obviously we had that whole episode about Trump in sheep's clothing, wolves in sheep's clothing. But Charlie Kirk, on the other hand, I can't say. I can say he tried to do the best with what he had. Ultimately, God is a judge, but I do believe that he had his faith in Christ. Because even whenever it came to certain debates, certain people that would come and give him hate comments and call him certain names, he would still try to show him the love of Christ. Not by saying certain words, because he would have rebuttals. Don't get me wrong. He would go and try to rebuttal, and he would say some, you know, a little bit of snideful or petty things from time to time. But ultimately, there was different times, you know, we're all human, but ultimately there was different times where, yeah, he was trying to go and spread the gospel. He was trying to state the fact that we are imperfect and we have came from sin and the separation of God. So whether he is a martyr for God or not, he is to some. That's what I will say. He is to some, because I cannot read his heart. You cannot read his heart. We can tell them by their fruits, but there were certain fruits that were good about him. There were certain things that he wanted to say that were on par with what biblical teachings understand. Now, unfortunately, it has caused a wreaking of havoc, and people mistook his message so hard to where now people are so much more bold to the point where they're angry. For some reason, they're angry at minorities whenever it was a young Republican white man that killed Charlie Kirk, that assassinated him. That's not even a killing. That's an assassination. That is plotted out. And they're mad at minorities, so it gave them a level of allowing themselves to have that white supremacy mindset, white superiority mindset of believing that they are better than. And I witnessed it firsthand. Actually, right now in the city that I'm in, I was able to go and I saw someone make a comment in the city, and there were so many. It was basically a certain celebration that was going on from Mexico, but people were celebrating it here, right? They had it on their cars and basically showing the participation and celebration on their vehicles. Now, they weren't going crazy. They weren't over here burning out and doing all this other stuff. And mind you, on 4th of July, I saw some kids over here popping fireworks right in the middle of the street, in a 4-way street, the main highway, the main road going through here, and nothing was done. But it was like a peaceful inner celebration, just kind of showing the flag, saying, okay, this is cool. This is like Mexican 4th of July, essentially. And there was a lot of hate in those comments. I'm telling you, I have never seen, and I'm from Texas, but I have never seen anything like that. That was just insanity. And it could be because of what had just happened a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. It could be just festering up. It could be a manner, because a lot of times, of course, it's insecurity in oneself. It's lack of identity in oneself. However, I hate making things race things, but it is something that we do need to address. And I hate saying race too, but to get onto the conversation, right? Because we're only one race. We're the human race. But whenever it comes to certain melanation in our skin pigmentation, there is far and few between that will actually teach what is necessary, and that will actually move in a spirit-filled manner. But I believe Charlie Kirk did what he attempted to do, what he believed was his mission and his purpose. That I do believe, because ultimately he made an impact. Whether it was for the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of Satan, I cannot tell. But I believe, personally, that he truly believed that Christ was king. If he was deceived in certain values that he had, understanding who Christ really was or what Christ really was, ignorance is another topic. And we can tell that there was ignorance involved with his values. So I don't condemn the man. There are a lot of people giving him a lot of hate. I don't condemn the man. Now, there's deeper conversations when it comes to what happened to him that we will not go over right now, but we might have to make like a Patreon or something, because those are more exclusive conversations that are really, really real, that are exposing a lot more things, that are getting a lot deeper when it comes to the ultimate corruption of, spiritual places of what's that one thing in Ephesians, right? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers in high places of the world. And it's those high places of the world that we are battling, that are being exposed, that God is allowing to expose. So, as a martyr, I will say he was a martyr for some, because he did awaken a lot of people into Christ and want people to be more bold in their faith. But it also had a little double cusp of other people misinterpreting what he was saying and taking it as a superiority, because a lot of his followers were a lot of white young men. Obviously there was trinklets of different people in there, but it was, I believe he was misunderstood as well. And that's what I have to say about that matter. However, we have to love everyone, no matter if he was, well, I can't say that. I was going to say no matter if he was Satan himself, but you know what? I can't say that. No matter if he was as far as possible from the truth, no matter if he was Judas Iscariot, we still have to show that love of Christ. Now, that love of Christ doesn't mean that we have to take what everybody says and allow them to be pleased, or anything of a manner of stifling the truth that is placed within us. However, we have to show that love in knowing that they still hold the breath of God and they are connected to us one way or another, right? Until that separation comes. Because even whenever it came to the parable of the wheat and the tares, the wheats and the tares were still entangled and they were planted in the same soil. But it's not until the day of reaping that there will be separation. And that day there will be mourning, but there will be joy. There will be joy in the morning. Oh, that was all right. I love you all. I hope you have a blessed one. And as always, we will catch you on the flip side.